So, I want to talk about the Black woman who went viral on TikTok earlier this month for saying that she didn't want to provide her man. I am late on this as usual, but I still wanted to give my opinion. And just an FYI, I am posting on my second channel again. So, if you're interested in seeing non race related content from me, be sure to watch and subscribe. The link is in the description box. So, anyway, let's get into this clip.
I may get canceled for this, but I don't want my husband to just work and pay bills. I don't want him to not have a hobby. I don't want him to not have healthy mental health. I don't want him to not have savings. I don't want him to work and slave all day, every day to take care of my bills, our bills, and me just sit there and not contribute anything. This is coming from a young lady who has never been married. I don't have any kids. I have a dog. I'm fully educated, pay my own bills right now, and it is difficult. I have a great career, and it is difficult. So when I think of getting married and building with someone or coming together and bringing our assets together, I could never lay in my bed knowing that my husband has no life and no freedom and maybe no peace because all he does is work and pay bills so that I can enjoy, as if he doesn't deserve to enjoy. I truly want a partnership.
So you heard what Natasha had to say, and I'm not going to play the entire clip. You can watch the rest of it on her TikTok page. The video got over 1 million views. And first, I want to say that Natasha is allowed to have her preferences just like any other woman. And I do agree with some of what she said. I do think it's very important for men in relationships to be mentally healthy, to have hobbies and leisure time. But what kind of annoys me about videos like this is that the relationship dynamic she's describing is the most common for women. Most everyday women in marriages and relationships are working full time, just like their spouses and partners, and they are contributing to the bills in their household. And the reason why women, and especially Black women, are now saying that we want provider men is because Black women are either used to paying most of the bills in their household or they've done the 50-50 thing and they found that they actually give way more than 50%. Or they're paying 50% of the bills and doing 90% of the domestic labor and parenting. Studies show that wives and mothers who work full time still care for the children more than their husbands and partners, and they're also taking on most of the domestic duties around the house. I mean, we can use the holidays, for example, since we're in the middle of the holidays. Who is doing most of the cooking, cleaning, and parenting in your family right now? The men or the women? In most families, it's the mothers, the sisters, the aunties, and the other women in the family. And all of those women still have to work and pay bills on top of everything they're doing for the holidays. And this is not even including the emotional labor that women tend to put more of into our relationships. So, unless Natasha gets a unicorn man, she's basically signing up for two jobs while her husband only works one or one and a half if he works part time around the house and with the kids. So, when Natasha says that she doesn't want a man to work hard while she sits and does nothing, honey, housewives and stay-at-home moms don't sit and do nothing. Taking care of the home and the children is a full-time job. Hell, even if you don't have children and you're partnered and living with a man, cooking and cleaning is like a part-time job, especially if you can't hire help. And most people can't afford to hire help, by the way. So usually the bulk of those tasks fall on the woman. And if you want to make the argument that men have more physically laborious jobs, so they have to work harder, okay, well, that's the cost you pay for being the boss. Men want patriarchy. They want to be the leaders. Well, they have to work harder than women. That is a system that men created. So if they don't want to do most of the work, then they need to change the system. That's on them. And she says something about wanting her man to have hobbies. Ma'am, you work full time and you have hobbies. So why can't a man do the same thing? When she has children, she's still going to have to work, take care of the kids and the house, and also make time for herself. So why can't men do the same thing? And listen, I date high earning men, and I have never met one that didn't have hobbies or engage in leisure time and non work related activities. They find time. Trust me. If you date them, you know that they find time. Just like women work full time and raise the children, do most of the work around the house, and have hobbies, men do too. And yes, it is hard to find time to do things that you want to do if you work a lot, but that's life. So when I watched this video from Natasha, it was very obvious to me that she was responding to the hypergamy content online, specifically where Black women are stating that we either want or have provider men. And to me, this video is giving concern trolling and virtue signaling, like she's trying to appear better than hypergamous women or women who want a provider. And to be honest with you, I think some women also make these announcements because they're secretly in competition with other women for high earning men. And they want to look like the quote unquote better woman that wants a man only for him and not his money. Meanwhile, she's secretly looking for a provider man, just like the other women that she's talking about. She's just more covert with it. Because what Natasha is saying has already been said, even by women who want providers. I've heard women, even in hypergamy spaces, encourage women to work and make their own money. And they frequently tell women to have their own, including myself. I say it all the time. The women who say that they don't want to work and all they want to do is go on trips and do nothing, they're in the minority. And once again, I think the number of those women are being exaggerated by men and women with ulterior motives. Because outside of what Natasha said about a man's mental health being important, what she's saying is redundant because most people today have to work and fit their hobbies in around their work schedules. We have no choice. Men are not exempt from that just because they're men. And see, this is how women fall in the 50-50 trap. They think that everything is going to be equal, straight down the middle in these relationships, or they think that men are going to put in just as much as they do outside of their jobs, but it rarely plays out that way. You got with a man that told you your relationship was a quote unquote partnership, but then 8 years down the line, it's you doing most of the parenting and the domestic work because you're quote unquote better at it, as most women are. And because you're also working full time, you're unhappy, you're stressed out, you're depleted of all your energy. And now you're somewhere talking about you lost yourself and you have to find yourself again because you have no time for your hobbies and your interests. That is usually the reality for women. 50-50 is not real, ladies. The women will always end up giving more than 50%. And this is why my motto will always be hypergamy or nothing, especially if you want marriage and children. I just don't see relationships being worth it any other way, unless, of course, you get a man who's actually going to do as much labor as you're doing in the relationship, labor around the house with the children while you both work full time. But since that is rare statistically, you're taking a huge risk if you bet on a man to actually do that. And something else I noticed is that there were many Black women in the comments under this video agreeing with Natasha. And of course, Black men were praising this woman all over the internet. So once again, we have proof that most Black men are not traditional men. And most Black women are also not hypergamous or quote unquote gold diggers. The manosphere is still pushing this lie that there are hordes of traditional Black men who don't have any Black women to date because we have the quote unquote wrong orientation. But every time you turn around, a critical mass of Black men are co-signing 50-50 and other non-traditional relationship dynamics. They want women who are educated and work and go half on the bills like Natasha. They also want Black women to fund their lifestyle and give them $700 a month to help materialize their potential like Dr. Umar said, or pay half the bills while they can only pay the light bill like Tyler Perry said. They also want to be quote unquote bad bitches and get spoiled by women like ASAP Rocky said. They also want Black women to cook for them every day like Cooking with Kaya and be feminine, fit, and friendly and submissive. Oh, and you can't be a housewife because that's quote unquote lazy, like Tawanda Braxton's man said. But these men are still online pushing the false narrative that most Black men are traditional. No, they're not. They are just as non-traditional as Black women, and the proof is in who and what they co-sign online over and over and over again. And like I said about Cooking with Kaya, any woman that a critical mass of Black men are praising is usually a woman that you don't want to be like, ladies. Natasha is another example of that. And like I always say, I don't necessarily think that Black women should be announcing their desires for provider men or talking about hypergamy online with their face showing. But I also don't think we should be announcing that we don't want provider men on the internet. Because when you do that, ladies, you become a dust magnet, especially if you are a Black woman and all you're doing is reinforcing the idea that Black women's standards are low and we don't require much, if anything, from a man. Even if it's not intentional, that is the category you're putting yourself in. And then later down the line, when you have men coming out saying that you don't deserve anything, you're going to be mad about it, even though you've been co signing it the whole time. Non traditional, broke, modern men love women like Natasha because they know with her, they don't have to provide much. They'll get 50% of the bills paid and a bunch of free labor. And this is probably why married men statistically live longer than single men, because women are basically taking care of their husbands like children. So, ladies, if you're going to sign up for that, it would be most beneficial for you and your children to have a provider man. I do agree that women should have their own income because, like Natasha said, your man can get sick or hurt, or something could happen in the relationship where you break up and things don't work out. So, of course, you want to make sure that you and your children would be comfortable and taken care of on your income. But again, I don't even think I need to tell most Black women that. Plenty of Black women are getting their education, they're making their own money, including myself. I love making my own money. But you better believe that any man I'm dealing with romantically makes more than I do. And that would especially be required if I wanted children. And ladies, if you're the type to put a lot into a relationship, and if you want children and you want marriage and you plan on living with a man and doing all these things, don't allow these men and women online to convince you to sell yourself short and enter these fake partnerships that primarily benefit men in the long run. Some of these people online, they're well-meaning, they're trying to give you good advice, but most of the time they're trying to put you in the sacrifice seat, especially if you're a Black woman. It's a setup, it's a trap, don't fall for it. So ladies, in the comments, let me know your experience with 50-50 relationships. Were they actually 50-50, or were you contributing 80% and just calling it 50-50? Or were you paying 50% of the bills and doing 90% of the domestic labor and parenting? Also, let me know what you think about Natasha's video. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch up with you in the next one.